ikulu kinin sanhata. Gua ako si Robert Namalik Celestial. Toto Dedido. I'm from Dedido. Well, at that time I passed the entrance exam, so I turned 18, so I decided to join. Right. Yeah, it was the U.S. Army. I entered in 1975 in October. My first station was actually Virginia, and then from Virginia I went to Georgia, and from Georgia I went on a temporary duty station to the Marshall Islands, to Enewetak Atoll. I was there for 6 months to clean up the they call it post-war debris, but actually it was the contaminated soil and debris from 43 nuclear detonations from the northern islands. They have 40 islands there in Enewetak Atoll, but I was stationed up in the north side in Lojua Island. So from there, and then we work on different islands, especially what's called the Dome in Runit Island. That's where it was a detonation of a nuclear bomb that made a crater called, actually it was called Yvonne in 1958. And so we were tasked to drain that crater, which we didn't completely drain it. And then we took debris from other islands like NGB and Sally and dump it into the crater, and other people would come. We did it in phases. I was the second phase, and so you have two types of personnel. You had the cleanup personnel, and then you have the support personnel. And so after that, then I went back to Fort Benning, Georgia. Well, the true story is that there was only two islanders. There was my roommate, uh, Rod, and I, and we were told to go to the commander's office and report. So we did, and so our captain, our CO, said they're asking for volunteers to go to Hawaii, and who would like to volunteer for 6 months, and then you'd be stationed at the Marshall Islands, and we'd be able to take a 1 week vacation in Hawaii every month. So Rod turned it down, so I was kind of volunteered to go to the Marshall Islands. So I was a truck driver at that time, heavy equipment, and so off I went to Hawaii, and then was with the 84th Engineers, and then from there they transferred me and a few other young soldiers, and we flew all the way to Enewetak Atoll, landed there, got on the main island. A lot of people don't realize it, but Enewetak Atoll is the name of the entire 40 island chain, but they actually have an island called Enewetak Island. So we landed there, we stayed overnight, and they told us, don't get comfortable. You're going to be transferred to another island. So woke up next morning, got our different gears, got on a small boat, took us 2 hours to get up north, and came to a little small island as big as Cocos Island, and there was nothing on there, and just a bunch of hooches. Oh, a hooch is our living quarters. They what they did, they poured slabs of cement, like maybe 40 by 40 feet, and 10 and 2 by 4 houses, and that's all it was. They didn't have inner walls, no ceilings, just metal and 2 by 4 and a concrete slab. That's what we call hooches back then. Yeah. So we lived there for 6 months. We didn't have any showers, no toilets, no nothing. When we got there, we actually had a wooden shed with holes cut off in plywood, and underneath it we had 50-barrel drums cut in half, and that's where our latrine was, and our shower was just a water bag when we got there. So it was quite a shock when we got there. I think we just wanted it to go fast. So every morning we get up, we knew what we needed to do our job, get back, shower, and we had a little cantina. I don't know what it was, but they had go there, and a lot of people would drink beer and get in fights and throw rocks at each other, you know, and it was living. The living environment was so bad that imagine living in a small island like Coco's Island and nothing there. I mean, there was like you either just listen to your tape deck and stayed in your hooch or write letters and that was it, or go get drunk, with the other guys. And then what happens, just like every night, if you go get drunk, there's a fight, some helicopter comes in, medevac somebody out. And so that was the daily life. So I figured just stay to myself and go exercise in the gym, run, work, and wait for my time to leave that place. Yeah, it was one of the worst isolated tours I've been to. Yeah, so it was amazing. Some of the guys that were there didn't make it. The whole full 6 months. They wanted out of there. And they'll find a way to get out. So they did. Yeah. In my tour, the 6 months, there's about 500 military personnel on my island. They had Navy personnel, Air Force personnel, civilian personnel, and Army personnel. The civilians did the homes and larder. They did the food and beverage. And for the Army, we did mostly transportation of the contaminated soil. The Navy did the transport with the, what do you call it? Uh, at that time, it was just those old uh, boats that the front went down and then you'd get in and then the front would come back up and then and then it would take you to an island, and then you either had your equipment with you or to bring the equipment, and then you transfer that contaminated debris to rented island. So the Navy, that's all they did. They just transported us. The Air Force, they were in charge of the Geiger counters, to make sure that who was ever exposed, we'd go in. Our decontamination was jump in the lagoon and wash down, and then that was it. And for the SEALs, they did the demolitions, but for the Army, we did most of building the rented dome or just transport contaminated soil. And they even had civilians that later on they brought in what you call that, a container, and they made it our base exchange. So we had a civilian manager that did that, and that was it. We had Air Force, Navy SEALs, Air Force. Yeah, 3 different military personnel there. Yes, there was, I believe, 3 of them. Siswiko, Mr. Siswiko, I don't know where he's at right now. He was there. I believe he's from, uh, I forgot what village. And then there was Ed Bloss. Uh, Ed Bloss was the communications NCO. And there was another Chamorro, I remember. We were, they're called LCUs, landing craft units. So we get in the LCU, and he was sitting right next to me, and sitting on those LCU, it's metal, and it's got sand and wet and all that, right? So we're ready to go to another island, and he was Chamorro, but I forgot his name. And I noticed in his shorts he had these huge boils, and I said, tell him, what's with this, man? He said, oh man, I don't know. So I said, you better go to sick call the next day, when we get back. So he did. When he went on sick call, because we had medics right there in the compound. And after he went to sick call, I never saw him after that. They medevaced him to out of there. And the other one was Ed Bloss and Soswiko and myself. Those were the 3. And then we had a lot of Samoans. We had Hawaiians, Filipino. Yeah, yeah. There's another Chamorro here, Antonio Afaji. He was a run it guy. He lived in the same island I did, Lojo, but he worked actually in run it to build the dome. My job was to transport the contaminated soil to from one island to another. But so he came on right after I left. Then he came. Almost everybody there. We had whites, blacks. My hooch had two Mexicans. We had two Mexicans, black, whites. Yeah, we had islanders. So yeah, it was. I really never noticed, because we we just stuck to ourselves. Our hooch stayed with our hooch, and that was it. Yeah. For me, I wasn't told much. They just said it was post-war debris. We went there not knowing, I mean, they just said, we need to go in this area. It's the Air Force was there. We knew that they were testing for radiation, but we weren't. As a young soldier, you just did what you're supposed to do. You don't question anything. And one thing about when I was there, it was just like being here. You can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't see it. It's like nothing. And so we were basically very naive, and until we left, that's when we found out that a lot of the guys were sick or dying after we left. Yeah, because they detonated 43 nuclear bombs right there. And we lived right in that area. We even went into the crater. I did, and we have a lot of photographs where we're inside the crater, of a detonation of a nuclear bomb, and 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 so we were highly exposed to the, there's different types of ionizing radiation. Most of it that we're concerned, you have plutonium, you have cesium 137, you have strontium 90, you have a whole bunch of different ionizing radiation that we were exposed to. And so it's a miracle that a lot of, out of 4,000 of us, there's only 300 of us alive today. During my cycle, you had the first cycle that came there to build the Lojua camp. But when I got there, then it was we were the ones who actually started the movement to run it island back and forth to drain it, then transport contaminated soil. So as for equipment, all we had was rubber boots and dust masks, and that was it. I've shown you the videos and pictures that we had, and so that I could only speak from when I was there. We didn't. At one time, they gave us only one time, one day. They had it's a photo shoot, and so they gave us these yellow suits, and we put it on. Then they took pictures of us, and then a month later, it came out on what's that, military a magazine. And so we say, hey, wow, look, it's us. But that was the only time we ever wore that suit. But every day it was just shorts, no shirt, dust mask, just handling the radiation, contaminated soil or debris with no equipment. Yeah. And it's hard to explain. You live there, you're basically in a depressed mode because there's only you guys there, and it's a very confined area. It's you could take a rock and throw it to the other side, you know, and every day you just get up, find out which island you're going to, get your. Me, I drove a dump truck, 20-ton dump truck, and then put it back on the boat. They take you to another island. They dump the contaminated soil on my dump truck. Wait for another boat. Get on the boat. Take another drive to Runit Island, and that was it every day. And then wait for another boat to take you back home to Lojua, and and that was the day. That was our day every day. Yeah. Hours, hours. It take hours just to get there, and then when you get there, they tell you what to do, where to go, where not to go, and sometimes just wait there till the heavy equipment operator finish what he needs, and then he'll load up our trucks, get back on there onto the bay, and then wait for the other boats, and then transfer us from there. Take hours to go to run it, and then we'd wait there and run it, and then we'd take another boat, and then take us back to Lojua. It was I don't know. I never questioned what we were doing. It's weird, It's like you're just there, and you just did your job, and hope for the best. Yeah, yeah. Well, the for us, the guys from each hooch stayed with the group from that hooch. Like there's probably 13 of us in that one confinement. So we basically stayed with who we lived with. Yeah, we'd communicate with the other guys that did certain things around the islands, but really it was the 13 guys that you live with. Yeah. So it's almost like uh, one of one of the guys said, it's almost like living in Alcatraz. You can't escape, you know, and it's true. I mean, sometimes we just sit there and you had the lagoon on one side, then you had the ocean on one side, and so sometimes you sit on the ocean side and just daydream, say, wow, I can't escape, can't go nowhere, So he was right. We're basically in Alcatraz. Yeah. Running Dome is another small island, and they detonated a nuclear bomb on that island that made a huge crater, the size maybe of 3 football fields. And so our job was to drain it, build a concrete, and and cap it. We capped it in the end with concrete, and so they call that the Run It Dome. There's other debris there, like blown up uh, vehicles, parts of small ships and stuff like that. But most of the equipment and stuff, we dumped it in the lagoon. The lagoon is more hot than inside the dome. Yeah. So a lot of the people that were there, we knew that. I mean, you can't dump everything in that one crater. Yeah. So it's interesting. Now that I reflect back of what we did back then, it was like uh, working in a construction company. You go there, do your job, and get out of there. So that's what we did. But we didn't realize how it was going to affect us in our health, but it did. A lot of us are. I think all of us are sick. Have different ailments, diseases. All of us have. It's called osteoporosis, osteopenia, meaning that we have a thinning of our bones. We have brittle bone. We have arthritis, liver damage, cancer, all these other things. So being exposed to ionizing radiation is no fun at all. So the scary part is that you don't feel it, and until later on down the road. Yeah. No, no, no. Matter of fact, in when I got there in October, in December, a typhoon was coming, and it was strange because the islanders, like myself, the guys from Hawaii and Samoa, we grew up knowing what a typhoon is. And so being out there in the size of Cocos Island, we said, we're going to get devastated out here if this typhoon comes. But it took our commander a while to make the decision because our boat ride is quite long from Lojua to Enewetak. And so they made a decision late in the evening, and the boats that we used weren't equipped with front lights. And so we took a chance and we made it to Enewetak Island. And then they flew us from the next morning, they flew us out of there to Guam. So they brought us here to Guam. And we stayed here a couple of days and then we transferred back. And when we got back to the island, it was devastated. Yeah, so it was a good thing we left the island, or we would have been, uh, yeah, pretty much, yeah. That was an experience. Yeah. So we had to rebuild again. And matter of fact, a couple of years ago, he said it's leaking. I mean, it's not going. It was almost like the lease was up from the Marshall Islands, and then they had the what's that? A compact of negotiations. They had their contract with the Marshallese, and and so their lease was up, so they had to do something, and so they came up with let's clean it up, and so today the islands we lived in and the northern islands is still restricted. You can't go there. It's highly contaminated. So today only the southern islands are deemed livable and clean, but the northern islands today is still, it doesn't make any sense because we were there from 77 to 80 and we lived there and we ate the fish, we ate the lobsters, we ate everything. And then today, if you look at all the reports from the Department of Energy, Department of Defense, it's saying that the northern islands are highly contaminated. So if it's highly contaminated today, what were we doing back then? In 77 and 80. It's a miracle that a lot of us are still alive. What we were exposed to is 43 nuclear and a couple of hydrogen bombs. They detonated the first hydrogen bomb. It was 10.5 megatons, 100 times. Actually, it was 1,000 times stronger than the Nagasaki Hiroshima bomb. And so they detonated these nuclear bombs and hydrogen bomb in the atoll of Enewetak, because they have two atolls, Bikini Atoll and Enewetak Atoll. So our main job was to clean up the atoll, the northern islands. And so today, what I've learned is that it's still highly contaminated. A lot of different reports that I have and received and submitted it to Congress is that it's quite amazing that they actually put us there, and what we did. It was I think it's criminal what they did, especially we weren't trained to do that. We weren't given the right equipment. We didn't have the right, directions of what we should do, what we shouldn't do. It was more like, okay, let's just go in there and do it. It wasn't like, okay, this area is hot. If they had told us this area is hot, be careful, or even the Air Force guys go in there and test it with the Geiger. What they did was they sent us in there, and then when we come back, then they tested us with the Geiger counters. I thought that was kind of crazy, but yeah, it's. I wish I could describe it like Chernobyl in Russia. It's like the whole town was evacuated. And people can't live there. You can imagine that was just an explosion of a plant. But here you detonated 43 nuclear bombs. Then you had us go in there inside a crater. You made us build this dome, and then you made us live right there in the actual detonation area. And then you say that we're going to be fine. We just hope and pray that well, Congress now is taking, they passed the Honor Pack Act to include the Enewetak cleanup efforts. But look how long it took from 1977, 80, and July of no August 2022. It took them that long to pass a bill to grant us the recognition and the benefits of what we did. But we were highly exposed to 43 nuclear and hydrogen bombs. We were in ground zero for all that time.